Now that we have seen how personally identifiable information can be collected from public sources and how it can be actually crawled, collected, stored, and analyzed, all that. Now let's look at how somebody can actually misuse this information, right? How this your information about, let's take your voter ID that is being publicly available, can actually be misused, or your other information, Aadhar information, or your other personally identifiable information that's publicly available. So if you really think about it, one of the biggest problem that can happen because of this information that's publicly available is something called as identity theft. The identity theft happens because this information is publicly available. Now that I can go actually create a user, create a credit card, create a Aadhar number from the information that is publicly available about you. Right, so I can go actually apply for a credit card. I can go get the credit card delivered to my home, and use that for actually withdrawing money, creating a loan, all of that. So interestingly, the identity theft is actually a big problem across the world. Right. If you look at least the US, there's a lot of statistics to show that how much money every citizen in the US actually loses because of this identity theft problem. One of the biggest ways by which the identity theft problem gets created, the identity is getting stolen, is because of this information that's publicly available. I just did a Google search just to while preparing the slides, just for the word identity theft, and you would see lots of information that is around. And main focus I wanted to give you was this number of hours, right? Lots of things happen in a short span of time on this topic, showing that this topic is very, very very, very relevant to the society and very, very important in that sense. News articles are being written, people are talking about it, all that. Sourcing personally identifiable information, right? This is necessary because identity theft actually gets created because of getting all this information. What are the different ways that you can actually think of getting this information, right? Shoulder surfing is I'm typing the password for getting into my email. Somebody's actually behind my shoulders looking at it, sitting next to it, and then just peeping the keyboard on what password you're typing, right? A general practice that you want to have when people are typing the password is just look away from the keyboard, look away from what they're doing. And if you're really curious to know what they're typing, probably you will look at it. But general good practice could be to avoid seeing the keyboard. Dumpster diving is another way by which you can actually collect very personal information about users. For example, the idea of dumpster diving is meaning you throw trash, right? You probably use credit card bills, or you throw your big basket bills onto your trash, and that gets thrown out of your home into a larger place. And now if I was wanting to actually find out personal information about people, I would actually go dig that dump trash, right? In that, what all I could get a lot of information. I actually have seen personally some people's income tax filing returns, all that lying around the trash cans or around the place that I used to live earlier. Not very common. It's not that you will find the income tax filing returns every day. But it is something that you will actually see if you dig into some of these trash. Just think about it. What all we throw in our trash, can you actually use some of it to create a profile out of you? A good exercise for you would be to actually look at your trash for a couple of days and see whether you can actually create profiles. If somebody else could actually create profiles about you using that information that's publicly available, right? So that's how identity theft could be created, and that's how dumpster diving could be done. Social engineering. Social engineering is a very old technique by which, for example, if I were to get your information, I could actually call up, let's take if you're working in a company or you're studying in a college, I could call up, let's take if I end up finding which college you're studying, I could call up the college and say that, look, I'm so-and-so, so-and-so's relative. I actually wanted to talk to him. I'm not able to reach to him. It's an important message that I want to give. Can somebody actually give me a cell number from your records? I lost my phone, I'm not able to reach to him, all that, right? You could actually create a lot of convincing articulation by which you can get somebody to believe that this information is necessary, and this information only you can actually give, that is the college. And this has been done, I mean, Kevin Mitnick, if you want, feel free to go look at Kevin Mitnick. the one of the first known sort of say cyber criminal, one of the techniques that he used was the social engineering, figuring out, calling somebody, getting some details about person A, using that information, going to person B, getting some information about person C, putting all them together, creating a profile and using it. Social engineering is a way by which you can actually collect a lot of personal information. Like, for example, one of the subcategories of social engineering could be is like phishing. Right? Phishing attack is sending an email, getting you to click on a link, and showing a website asking you for a username and password. Right? So that kind of attacks can actually be very fruitful in collecting personal information. And when you think about this phishing attack itself, I could get you to go to a page, I could get you to download an image, and during the process, I could actually get a few lines of code on your machine and actually get to see your browsing history. I think last time we talked about, earlier we talked about the browser extensions, right? I could actually look at what browser extensions are you using, I mean, your browsing history, all of that can actually also be captured. Social media, we've been talking a little bit about social media, but there are loads of information that I could actually collect from social media about a user. And it's been known that people have misused the connections between people in terms of collecting personal information. For example, I could actually create a fake profile on some, using some profile information, connect with people, start asking for some personal information, meaning start asking for secret details of the projects that they're working on. All of that, if you know that they're involved in a government project, if you know that they're involved in something that is not publicly available, can you actually use social engineering? Can you actually use these social media to collect that information? Then the part that, so this is the part that I just described. This is the part that we already know, that government services actually have a lot of information about us online. Right, your voter ID, your Aadhar number, your driver's license, right? All of this information is publicly available. So one question that I have for you to think about is a difference between these sources. Before you go ahead with the video, if you can think about it for a second and scribble some ideas about what could be the difference between these two, that'll be nice. The main difference between these two is that the first one is not that reliable, right? Sometimes. Right, so you get some information from social, you get some information by social engineering. It's not clear whether that information is very, very reliable. Dumpster diving, unless if you get handled on something really, really with my name, with my details, then probably you can associate with it. Otherwise, you know that from the society of trash that we got, there were these 3 patterns that we were able to find. It'll be hard to associate it with PK. Whereas the one at the bottom, government data source, is like phenomenally reliable, right? If I get your access to your driver's license with your name on it, I mean, there's nothing that can be wrong in that information. Whereas if I go to a profile which says that, let's take Karthikeyan, right? I don't know which Karthikeyan this is, right? I don't even know whether Karthikeyan exists in real world with that profile picture, with that face, with that image. Whereas in driver's license, that is available on government sources, information is perfectly reliable. So reliable information from government sources makes it much more harder, much more sort of say vulnerable for people to use and create identity theft and do malicious activities around it. So I'm going to show you some examples of how publicly available information on government websites can be put together and some profile can be created, and can it be used for something? I think I leave it to your creativity to think about that. And why do government sources put this information, right? One way to think about it is that the information is publicly available, but you should also ask the question of why is even government putting this information, right? Why should anybody know what PK's Aadhar number is, what PK's driver's license number is, what PK's voter ID number is? The government is actually making it available publicly because of some specific reasons, right? They have this e-government initiatives by which They want to reduce the time the citizens are actually submitting their applications. Citizens are waiting for the details, all of that. By putting the information public also, the services that the government is providing us is also increasing, right? Now you are able to actually sit at home, pay your electricity bills, pay your water bills, pay your so to say real estate bills, right? Taxes, income taxes become very much online, right? You could apply for Aadhar changes that you need in your Aadhar number. Let's take home address or something. It's very easy to sit and do it at home now. That's the main reason why many of this information is also made publicly. Information, services, all of that is made publicly available. Improve data quality and easy checking verification also, right? So data quality, information is available, so you can actually check. You could actually make an argument that, oh, something is not correct. You can go back and fix it. Verification is also verification becomes much more simpler when you're able to see what information that the government has about you. But unfortunately, if the information is publicly available, then it could be actually used for breaches. It could be actually used for identity theft that I said before. So this slide shows you about Election Commission of India, potentially an example. Just shows what all information about you is publicly available that can be actually crawled. Name, father's name, gender, date of birth, address, date of issue, all of this could be actually gotten. Not just yours, actually. If imagine if this is gotten for every one of us in the class, right? Then we can actually find out some sort of the group information that is available that may not be directly available also. So it's not about just individual information. For example, if I could get this information and I could actually profile your family together, right? Who are you living with? What could be potentially the relationship that you have with that person, right? Those can become pretty damaging. A simple list of what PII could be: voter ID details, which can give you a lot more information: your name, father's name, age, gender, date of birth, driver's license number, PAN number, and phone number. We can generate a longer list also. I'm sure you can actually add some very specific attributes, information about us in this list. If you find something that is that we can add to this list and which are personally identifiable, please send it in the email list. We can actually take a look at it and have a conversation there. Here are some services that was available at some point in time for looking at the personal information, looking at publicly available information, profiling them, and seeing the details together. This is Yusuni.com. So this is one of my students that used to work at that point in time, Shrishti Gupta. Searching for Shrishti, you can get details about some home addresses, books, some profile pictures, some details about Shrishti. Right. So this kind of services have become very, very popular in the last, let's take a decade or so. Before, these services were useful for, let's take job verification. You're applying for a job, the company wants to give you the job, but the company wants to make sure that all the information that you provided is correct and want to do some background checking, all of that. So the middleman who has this aggregation of all the information about PK becomes very, very valuable in terms of verification, right? Another site which is actually popular, when I was preparing the slides, I actually went to the website to see what are the things that they're doing now. So you get, again, the same search, Shrishti Gupta, that's our actual picture, that's our actual LinkedIn page. And then Shrishti Gupta, New Delhi. So giving information to more and more information that's available, if you feed it to these kind of systems, they become much more accurate. I'm sure you can go back and relate to the great hack video that we saw in the week 1, where the argument was the Cambridge Analytica was able to actually find information about us, about US citizens particularly, with like 3,000, 5,000 features of ours, right? Which is what I'm talking about. If you're able to feed in more and more, Punurangam Kumaraguru, IIIT Hyderabad professor, computer science, right? So studied in the US, lived in a particular city, and there's all these information. If you actually give, the system can be more and more effective, more and more accurate. The precision can be much, much higher. Yeah, so this is that's the website, PIPL.com. Feel free to go take a look at it again. They seem to have forked into a lot of services, which can be very, very useful for finding out frauds. I think that one of the videos on their website talks about why this profiling is extremely important, is to find out frauds, right? Find out fraudulent users, find out fraudsters in general. Because knowing that PK information that is given in one place is not the same as in the other one can actually do put a red flag. So when we are actually being PK is being looked for some information, this red flag can show up, and appropriate decisions can be made. Just a quick list of services that are available for looking at government open data. Right. What information is available on some of these services? The first one is Indian Qanun, which actually gives you a nice search engine where you can actually search for judgments of Supreme Courts and High Courts. And OpenCivic.in is again based in India, or based on data from India, data about state assembly elections and profiles of MPs of states. The next two are outside India. ABQ Ride gives you the details of city buses, fares, or for other public transportation. So these kind of services have become much more prevalent now, using publicly available information, using these kind of transportation information that's publicly available. Can you actually put them together to create some service with it? Illustrates gives you details about crime, education, transport, census data of a location. So these kind of publicly available services are also become very, very important to do some interesting analysis, interesting pattern predictions, interesting user behavior, right? So there's been a lot of studies and a lot of need for having this open data, also arguments to make for having this open data. So data collection. So as I said, I'm going to show you one example where publicly available government information was actually crawled, analyzed, profiles were created to see what we can do with it. The general architecture for many of these infrastructure that is built is first is some type of crawling, then pre-processing of information, then storing of information, and then using the stored information can we actually create profiles with them. That's exactly what is in this picture. Also, government sources, driver's license, voter ID, all this information that's publicly available. Can you do a threat modeling? We'll actually see what a threat modeling is and how threat modeling becomes very handy. So the idea of threat modeling is that you want to know where the loopholes are, where the weakest link is in the complete ecosystem that you built. For example, ATM machine, ICSI setting up an ATM machine, or the idea of setting up an ATM machine in a particular location. You want to do the threat modeling to understand what are the threats that are available in that particular location. The threats in different locations can be different, right? So threat, something that is in Bangalore, Mahatma Gandhi Road, may be very different from an ATM machine that is kept on, let's take Kukatpalli in Hyderabad. So these threat modelings becomes very essential to actually build solutions around it. So then the data extraction, which is MySQL and PHP, and then information aggregation. Can you put this information together to create a profile? And then there was a system called Ocean that was built, which actually became an interface for seeing this information. Next couple of slides are the ways that you could actually see these driver's license, voter ID, what input is given and what output is got. These may not be the services, these may not be the way it is now when you go look at it. And also remember, all of this is from Delhi. So if you're from cities that are away other than Delhi, the entire interface, the entire information that is available may be very, very different. So this one, enter the driver's license number, input, and the output is date, address, parent's name, blah, blah, date of birth. All of this is showing up, right? And these are all illustrative purposes, but yeah. And if you see how do you get the driver's license, you again, as we said before, can we actually look at other sources to get this information? Social engineering, that's what would happen, right? I get information one. Let's take your name. I get the information that your name is Shrishti Gupta itself in this example. I got Shrishti Gupta. I'll use a service one, which takes input as a name and output as something else. Input is name, output is something else. Let's take output is age, gender, and let's take driver's license number. Now I'll use this driver's license number as an input to another service and then get something else. So this is how I will actually build a profile of Shrishti Gupta. All right. Voter ID, same thing. If you get to know where does Shrishti live, even approximately, right, at some name Kamal Vihar or some Kukatpalli, that level of information is available. You could actually feed that information, which district is she part of, and then you can actually get some relevant information. So in this case, it is saying father's, mother's, husband name, house name, voter photo ID, card number. Right. So you could actually start using information from different sources and creating a profile. Here's another one, and then input being name and some date of birth or mother's maiden name. Those are the kinds of information that is asked beyond just the name, right? Which can actually be a little harder for people to get. But once you have it, I think you can get a lot more information from. So this one was actually pretty very intrusive in that sense, which is to get the PAN card details about people. And threat modeling, right? So as I said, what is threat modeling? Threat modeling is a way by which you see how you can actually protect the details of the infrastructure that is being built. So that's how you do data collection from publicly available sources, particularly in this case, government websites. Let's look at some specific examples of how information can be collected from online. So here's an example of how to get driver's license, right? So the input is name. So again, for practical purposes, for the entire lecture, let's keep it Shrishti Gupta as the input wherever it is, right? Shrishti Gupta input is given. and accordingly you could actually get some information from these driver's license website. So here is how I would see how to actually social engineer getting more and more information, right? So we have Shrishti Gupta. Let's take, we know the name. From the name, look at services that takes only as name and gives outputs as something else. Right. Let's take driver's license, right? From here, so now you know the name and you know the driver's license number here. Can you find a service that takes these two as input and then produces something else as output? So doing this will help you to just add more information to Shrishti and make the profile more and more, so to say, a lot more details can be added to these profiles, right? And it's also interesting to see how much of personal information you can actually draw from these government services only using some simple information to start with. And these are examples taken some years back. So the exact page may not look like this, but some of these services were available at some point in time. So this is a voter ID. You find so from knowing Shishti Gupta, you got some voter ID details. So from there, you know that which district, which location she lives. Can you use now Shishti Gupta, and that location is an input for a service which is taking input as name and the location and giving you something else, which could be the voter ID, which could be right. So that's the from a driver's license number, from a driver's license detail, you can come to voter ID. So that's the input. Can you actually give the input as Shishti Gupta? Let's take Kukatpalli or Delhi. It could be Oscars or Okla Phase 3, something like that. Use that, and then can you take some? Can you get the voter ID details from the service? That's the PAN output. So threat modeling, right? I mentioned earlier what a threat modeling is. Threat modeling is a important idea to understand. When any systems are built, you want to know what the threats are. Threats, particularly, you want to understand threats from various points, right? So in this example, we're seeing the government services being here, user being here, and then that's the threat boundary. And if you see, there is driver's license, voter ID, PAN card. These are different services that are available. So now the question to do threat modeling is that, can you understand what threats are there if I get access to, let's take name, address, father's name, date of birth from here. Date of birth is here, name and date of birth from here. If I put these two date of birth together, can I actually find this name, which may be unique, right? So you have to enumerate the different threats that is there, and of course there's a formal mechanism of dread model, which I think slide later or one later I have a table to show how to actually measure these values. But these dread models are these threat models are necessary to do to understand, to get a feeling of what the systems are being built on. So dread models come in. I mean, the same dread model can be used for, let's take a security for the campus, or the security environment, compound wall, and the security guards that you probably have in your society where you live, or the security at the airport. Right? All of this is places where threats happen. So threat modeling becomes very, very relevant, and you can actually build solutions depending on what you find from these threat models. You can again classify it as low, medium, high, and depending on the risks that are there, you can build solutions around it. So some of the attacks that you can think of, like the point of talking about all this was the identity theft, right? Some of the attacks that you can actually think of is creating fake voter ID. I know that Shishti Gupta lives somewhere. Can I actually apply for a particular fake ID as Shishti Gupta and actually get it on Shishti Gupta's name? So if you see, this is a registration form for getting a voter ID. It's asking for name, date of birth, father's name, and gender, male, right? Some of these information, we saw that we could actually get it from other sources. Even other information is also village, town, district. So if you have access to some services that we discussed before, we should be able to generate some of this information. Yeah. So this one was a little stretch. We were able to get to this state because we had some more sort of say insider threat, right? Some information that we know because we some of the users, because we actually know these users also otherwise. Right, insider threats are problems that happen because of people inside the organization itself. Right, I could have, meaning PII Hyderabad having some information being leaked is because somebody inside PII Hyderabad had access to that information and they decided to actually make it public. Right, so one of the other things in this case, we were able to get to this level because we had access to some insider information. We were able to get to this level of income tax file returns details. Yeah, so this is the DREAD model that I said, which is DREAD stands for damage potential, reproducibility, exploit. So DREA, affected users, and discoverability. Low, medium, high, these are the ways by which, as I said, you can actually classify the rating, and you can find this DREADs can be done for every aspect of every aspect of the infrastructure that you have, and use that to decide high, low, medium for every single point, right? So there may be many gates in your campus, housing society. Can you actually define threat models for each of them? We have online, so there are many exit points and entry points for our internet services that we use on a campus. Can you actually find out what the threat models are? Can you measure them? Can you quantify them? Quantifying helps because depending on that, you can decide solutions again. Yeah, okay. So this one is dread model. Dread model here is so high, medium, low. The damage potential, the chances of the potential of making the attack, right? Leak sensitive information, because it is you can actually, from the government websites, you can get a lot of sensitive information from there. If it was low, it will be leaked trivial information. If it's high, attacker can subvert the security system, get full trust authorization, run as administrators, upload content, right? It's not necessarily through this, giving Srishti Gupta as the input and taking it as details from the interface. All that. If it's a high risk environment, somebody as an administrator can get access to the database and just change the details, upload a new set of files, and then make all these details and to show up there, right? Reproducibility, the attack can be reproduced every time and does not require a timing window, does not require a particular context. The attack can be reproduced, but only with a timing window and a particular race situation, which is a particular context is necessary if the medium level of reproducibility is possible. And low is it's just hard to reproduce the attack. Exploitability, an OS programmer could make the attack in a short time, right? For if it's high exploitability, somebody easily, let's take an undergrad student or a 12th standard student, should be able to get access to the database and do attacks. For a medium, little bit of a skill. For a low, the attack requires extremely skilled person and in-depth knowledge every time to exploit. Affected users, all affected users default configuration key customers. Imagine affected users is high in a context of where let's take our LinkedIn username passwords is got hacked, right? And that the affected users are high because it's everybody, whoever was in the database, whoever was the users on LinkedIn. Some users, non-default configuration, it is just medium because whoever, let's take if the attack happened on a campus or on a network, whoever was part of that network got affected. Obscure features affects anonymous users. The affected users is really, really small. Again, the context is very small. Let's take in one room, there was a breach of some information. Discoverability is how does these attacks gets discovered, right? Discoverability is high if published information explains the attack. The vulnerability is found in the most commonly used features and is very noticeable. It's easy to reproduce these kind of attacks. Not necessarily, I mean, think of Stuxnet, right? Probably it's on the low side. The bug is obscure and it is unlikely that users will work out the damage potential, right? Stuxnet's kind of thing would be at that level. Discoverability is extremely low. In the medium side, the vulnerability is seldom used part of the product. It is something potentially, possibly you could actually find out if you spend some time. They all look slightly subjective, and they also look slightly not very quantifiable. But that's how this method is, where you just mark it as high, medium, low. For every entry or exit points, then you kind of accumulate all of them, find a way to put them all together, and then you can say that, look, IIIT Hyderabad has the from the output of the dread model, IIIT Hyderabad has so much of risk. You could do this for every single system, and in this context, it is done for the government services that are publicly available. So I kept talking about Srishti Gupta as an example. Here is again an example where you could actually think of going back to the train example, right? Going back to the train picture that I showed earlier. Yeah, showed earlier that what information is publicly available. Can you actually use this publicly available information and have a conversation with the person who's actually next to you, in your train, in your compartment? That's the kind of motivation that we had when we started looking at this problem. So in this case, this output is input is let's assume that somebody who's in your train in the compartment, you saw the name, you wanted to look at who this person is. You gave the input into the system, Srishti Gupta again, let's take. You get the voter ID, all that. The most interesting aspect here in this example is Srishti Rawat. The most interesting thing is the family structure that you can get. I said earlier also that building these kind of services to put information together and create profile, not necessarily only you can be actually attacked or something. It can be the group that you're connected to, the family that you're connected with. All of them can be actually attacked here, right? So here it's the family structure that you can actually build, and family structure helps because now when you're getting into a train, you can actually arguably say that, oh, I know so and so from this group. Is this your father? Is this your brother? Did your brother go to the school? All these kind of conversations can be built because information is publicly available about people. Of course, there is lots of challenges, right? It's not that trivial to create these kind of profiling services very easily. So, for example, common name like Manish Gupta, if you search for it in India, in North India, in Delhi databases, you're going to get like tons of Manish Guptas, right? So it will be very hard to find out which Manish Gupta are we talking about, who's in the train. And also that, for example, this service called Linktree is extremely popular because the argument that the Linktree makes is that, look, the only link that you need to know is the Linktree link, because where users come on link, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Insta, all profiles to this one service, and Linktree knows all the profiles that you have in different platforms. Why is that helpful? That helps because it makes life much more simpler to actually maintain my profile. I don't have to tell everybody that, look, my profile in Facebook is this, Twitter is this, Instagram is this, all this. I just say that, okay, here's my Linktree profile, and please go take a look at all my profiles. But on the contrary, given that all these, you as a user are providing this information, the easiness of doing an attack is also very, very high because I get to know all the profiles of yours in one shot. Right. So that's where the Linktree becomes very useful or very not useful in that context. And not many users are actually using Linktree. For example, I don't have a Linktree profile. So it may not be that easy to get all users on Linktree. I'm going to also ask, so if you find yourself using Linktree, if you think it is how useful, how not useful it is, please share it on the mailing list. We can talk about it. So this government services, right? Users with voter ID, driver's license number, PAN number, all of them we could actually crawl from these services, and around 2K people had all the above. So which is, I could actually find out Manish Gupta, whose driver's license is this, whose voter number is this, whose PAN card number is this. Right. And at some point in time, we decided that we'll make this service. We'll talk to people about what do they think about these kind of services, information put together, all that. Meaning, I'm pretty sure, let's say, for example, I'll ask you also, right? How intrusive do you think this is, which is starting from your name going to actually a family structure? Again, reply, post on the email. We can take a discussion around this also. So the responses that we got was, it's an eye-opener to a common man, waiting for an upgraded version which will work for other states also, because we are done only for Delhi. I'm really shocked that the exact ID numbers are available online without much security against data mining at the scale. A great shortcoming and a security flaw has been pointed out by Ocean. Great work. Good system, great work. Didn't know such a system existed. Right. So you feel free to take a look at the master series itself. I have later in the slides the pointer. So what's the takeaways for all that we saw in this week? Large amount of personal data is publicly available, which can be used, misused. Will be great if some of you can explore the idea for the city that you are part of, right? Delhi is something that we did. I'm sure many of you are from different cities. See, I mean, what I would like you to do is just go look at government services in your city, in your state. Do some sort of say searching around to see whether these information are publicly available, whether you can find any services for driver's license, all of that for the city. I mean, I think doing it for your own city is very exciting because you'll get to know something about your own city. Pulling all this information from publicly, you can actually create personally identifiable information and a profile of users. Super high risks for some because many information is available about some where you can actually triangulate this information and get the user profile. As I said, large number, about 2,000 users, all details were publicly available. So that's the thesis I mentioned. Take a look at it, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to actually answer later. So that's the end of week 8. Hope you got a good sense of the voter leak that we saw, the browser extension problem that we saw, and now we saw about publicly available information from government websites, how it can be actually used and misused. Again, please feel free to ask any questions on the mailing list. I see some questions coming, but sometimes they are all administrative questions. It'll be nice to have technical questions also on the mailing list. And see you next week.